Hello, and welcome to the IL style boss rush tutorial. In this, I'll essentially be going over every single boss in the game, specifically under IL style, with primarily a focus on getting the best IL style boss rush time for all stories as possible. If you don't know how that works, basically you get to go into the boss rush with 99 lives, and you have to see the best times you can get on each boss with 99 lives. This does differ from single segment in some ways. Notably, restarts on some fights are faster in IL style than they are in single segment. Notably, Knuckles and Rouge and Sonic and Shadow 1. You can't restart in those in single segment because it takes like 6 seconds to restart. Whereas in this, it's faster to do so because there is a cutscene. Other than that, there's a couple other restart strats. Tails 1, Eggman 1, Tails 2, Eggman 2. All of this is to say, you might get some solid information for single segment bosses here, but it's not the focus of this video. A lot of what's going to be gone over here is specifically for boss ILs. So if you're not here for that, I'm hoping to make a single segment boss rush video in the near future. Be similar structure to this. So stay tuned for that. If you are here to learn about this, hi. I have a bounty for IL style boss rush right now. As of the time of recording this, we'll see how long that lasts. Where if you can get a sub 720 all boss rush with a submitted hero, dark, and all onto the boards, you have to submit all three. It's a $50 bounty. Really hope that someone gives it a try. I think this is a really cool category, and there's a lot of really neat things to learn here. So without further ado, let's get started.
This game of tag is boring.
So starting off, we have Bigfoot. For what it's worth, not much actually changes for this boss between single segment and IL style. The way I do this boss to get a frame perfect fight does differ from how you would do it in story, just because I find this method easier, and I'm not a hero story runner, so I never learned that method. But if you are hero focused, Katie has a really good video on how to get frame perfect Bigfoots in a story setting that I'll link in the description. Check that out if you're interested in that. But for starters, IL style, while we do have 99 lives, and that does seem very generous, a lot of fights like this one, bosses for some reason have a lot of cutscenes at the start of them, and cutscenes make the timer start sooner. In particular, you lose 0.85 seconds, I believe. So while I believe, let's say it's 21:39 is a frame perfect single segment fight. Both in single segment boss rush and in IL style boss rush especially, you do want to restart here to get that 0.85 back. But all you have to do, first hit, hold forward to homing attack towards this box, and then you'll want to land on this box. This is a very lenient first hit. You just need to jump up, hit him like that. This might have been a frame or two behind because I'm trying to buffer so I can actually talk. I will say regarding this, I'll point out whenever buffers are actually necessary for a strat. I'll be doing a lot of pauses through this just so I have time to explain things. But yeah, don't Don't really concern yourself with that. Just focus on what's being said. You don't have to pause like this, especially not for this fight. This is the easiest fight in the run by far. Finalhazard's probably the only other one that even comes close. But once you get the first hit, you can do what Katie does in the video, where you would somersault back onto the box and jump back up, or you can bounce. And this is a great example because since I was talking, I did lose frames. There's a cascade effect when you don't hit, and this applies to Hotshot as well. When you aren't hitting Bigfoot or Hotshot frame perfectly while they're in the air, they'll drift backwards like this. You can see, like, I'm gonna show you. So Bigfoot is dying outside of the arena here. So I know this time's gonna be very slow if I actually take it, because what kept happening was that I kept missing like a frame or two for each of those hits. And so Bigfoot bounced further back, which makes it harder for me to get a frame perfect hit on the next hit, which loses even more time, and rinse and repeat. He just keeps getting further away, and so you keep losing more time. This is really, really important for Hotshot in particular, that we'll be getting to later, because with Hotshot, it can actually make the boss impossible in some cases. But let's go back to the start, since that fight was not ideal. Homing attack. So, yeah, sometimes you'll mess up landing on the box. That's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to delay your first bounce. 4. And just time homing attacks for the next 2 hits as so. That's a frame perfect. 2054 is as good as it gets for Bigfoot. Couple other things I want to say before we start on Eggman 1. So for starters, for all boss rush, IL style specifically, it is optimal to upgrade wise. You want all your upgrades on, except you actually want light dash off for Sonic. This does lose time in Egg Golem, I believe. Not a ton. It's a couple tenths, I believe. But notably, this is essential for a strat in Shadow 2. Something that I thought was way too hard for boss rush for a while. But honestly, it's really not that bad. So it is going to get talked about in this video. And that is essentially, you do a task bounce. That task bounce, words are hard, strat for Shadow 2. Sounds intimidating, but that's one of the few cases where buffers are required. Anyway, all of that is to say, you have light dash off, and that will come up in Egg Golem. I'll talk about how to start the fight if you have light dash instead. The one other thing I'll say for Bigfoot and Hotshot, if for whatever reason you're doing this on Dreamcast, I'll cover all my bases. It is technically optimal on that version, because essentially, if you break a box and restart on certain frames of Bigfoot or Hotshot launching off of the ground, the particle effect, like the little smoke effect that comes out whenever their thrusters activate, will actually lag the timer on restart. It saves a little more than half a second. It's about 0.6 optimally, I believe. So if you are playing on Dreamcast, that's important to keep in mind. Dreamcast is not optimal for this category, I don't think. You do save about 0.6 for Shadow 2, not Shadow 2, for Hotshot, for Bigfoot, and for Finalhazard, where it's also possible where you restart on certain voice lines. I think the first one is the voice line about a minute in, where Eggman is talking. Just watch an IL, you'll see it. So you save about 0.8 there and 0.6 on Hotshot and Bigfoot. But in exchange, your shot speed is significantly slower, which notably really affects Dark Egg Golem. You lose like 4 seconds there, I believe. So it's still not optimal, thankfully. But important to keep in mind if you are playing on that version. But that aside, going back to Eggman 2, there's a couple things to keep in mind setup wise for this. Essentially, this fight differs in 2 major ways, and the same thing goes for Tales 1. The first part is if we line up Tails' cannon like this should work. Then we restart and hold B. We get a free lock on for Eggman on respawn. And then you want to come over here. This is where it differs the second way. If I get this first try, I'm going to be shocked. This is a huge reset point for me. Don't be discouraged if you mess this up a lot. Because the AI is very finicky in this fight. But yeah, essentially, you need to hold specific angle. I'm actually gonna try and not get this hit. If I do, I'm gonna come back. But you want to shoot your Vulcan cannon to hit him the 3rd time, like that. And then you have to hover so that you lock on to him while you're shooting the Vulcan cannon at him for the 3rd hit. And then ideally it hits him there. I'm actually kind of glad it didn't. That way I get to talk about this first setup more. So what I do to start, this makes this real consistent. You can use the exact same setup for all 4 fights where it's relevant. You hold about this angle up and slightly right. I'm going to be using my clock input display for a lot of things here. You don't have to use a clock input display, but it will help things out a little bit. You can find those in the resource page, or I'll link it in the description as well. Shout outs to Ace for making this one in particular. Originality Ace, I guess I should say, is full tag. But anyway, you want to hold about this up angle and slightly right, and then start locking on, tap right, tap down, and ideally Tails will be facing towards the back of his right leg, and then if you restart from here, you should get the lock on just fine. From here, shoot as soon as you get control and can go up for your 2nd hit. Immediately pivot to the left, turn around while hovering to shoot the Vulcan cannon at him. I missed, apparently. But that's fine. But yeah, shoot the Vulcan cannon at him while off the level, and then dive down and shoot your laser.
Don't just run around. Stay alert and keep shooting.
Okay, there we go. Not an ideal time by any means, but good enough. You don't really need it to be amazing. Just anything that's like a mid to low 9 will be good enough. If you can get 8s, awesome.
I found you.
But either way, that is very important for IL boss rush because it saves a collective 3 seconds between those two strats. The early lock-on is the more important one. It saves 2 of those 3 seconds, so if you do want to omit the death strat starting out, by all means, it'll make the fight a lot easier. But with that out of the way, Shadow 1, this fight works very similar to Sonic 1. I'll go over the easier way to get the first hit and the harder way. So the optimal way to do it, you sit here and you hold a very particular angle during this start, and around 5.2 you have to hold B and start charging your spin dash, and you release about here 5.8, 5.9, or like 5.9, and then you storage at him. As you can see, my angle was a little off, so I missed him. This is the optimal IL strat. This is like, if you're going for world record, you need this. I would not recommend this for an IL style boss rush. You can, if you're really good at it, go for it. I'm just mentioning it as an option. What I would really recommend is whenever you start the fight, if you hold left and do the same first setup where around 5.2 you start charging your spin dash, and then about 5.9 you release and you storage, you'll cross paths with him perfectly. I didn't storage properly, so I didn't hit him, but you can see I went right through his path. This is really useful in that it just gives you the perfect line right off the bat.
You won't even get the chance.
When Shadow stops, that's your chance to attack him.
And he stays in that line for a while, so even if you're a little late,
No time to play games.
you can still hit him there.
You get the chance.
I didn't do it here, but yeah, this
There's no
holding
time to play games.
your left displaces Sonic
Chance.
just a little bit.
When Shadow
You won't even get the chance.
There we go. So yeah, for that first hit, you just, with that left hold, you then neutral stick and you spin dash storage directly into him. The reason this is not the optimal IL strat, since you're not holding an angle for the spin dash, it is a little bit slower. It only loses 4 frames. You can get a 10-15 with this first hit, and that is plenty good enough. You do not need a 10-09 for this fight. The exact same thing applies for Sonic 1, but with Sonic 1 instead, you would get a you'd get a 10-15 instead of a 10-10.
stops,
So then you jump away, you'll move left like this. You want to storage back into him. As long as you don't jump too near to him, like this, he shouldn't do this. I did, so he did. If he does this, set the fight.
There's no time to play games. You won't even get the chance.
when
There we go.
that's your chance.
So yeah, he comes back in like this.
I see.
You back up like that. If you just keep holding this like right upright angle like this, he'll just come right at you.
You know who I am.
And 34 is not great, but it's good enough. You just need to get the majority of the time saved for this.
Huh? Who's
Now, this split is a tougher one.
a ghost?
I'll go over baiting first. And then I'll go over the optimal strat. because the optimal strat saves about another second, but it's very, very finicky. But with some practice, it's reasonable. Anyway, this is a fight with a cutscene, so you have to restart. Baiting, all you gotta do, walk up to him, turn around so that he chomps at you. You go to about this fish, you dig, and this gets you cat boost. And from there, you just punch this, and then you go along with your day. I'm really surprised I still got that because I actually skidded the wall. So if you want to get optimal times, like low 36s or even potentially a 35, you do the same bait, and then you run back in, and then while he's under, you have to get low enough, you have to get far enough past him that you can dig once you're past him, and then whenever he hits you while you're digging, you'll shoot out behind him. And when you do that, there's a very small opening for you to hit the hourglass behind him before he realizes you're back there. So it's towards, back. Okay, so that's a pretty common fail point with this. If you position yourself wrong, I believe it's based on the timing of how quickly you get under him. Quicker is better, because if you're later, I believe it orients him in such a way so that his tail will smack you as you go behind him. I also should have mentioned, as soon as you get hit, you need to start gliding. The direction you're holding doesn't matter while you're gliding because you're getting boosted. So you're only going to be going back towards the screen regardless. But if you hit the tail, it refreshes that boost timer, so it makes you stuck longer, and so you can't get it. So what I would recommend is you get hit, you immediately glide while holding left, so the first possible frame you regain control, Knuckles immediately pivots left, you immediately land, you immediately punch. I'll try to do that all at once. This is not really something I feel like I can easily pause, buffer, and talk about at the same time. Yeah, I didn't quite get past him there. You have to be very particular about when you try to dig. Okay, this one looks good. Okay, awesome. So that's how it's supposed to work properly. We'll see if this is the last frame. I don't think it is. Oh, it is. Okay, so this is optimal even. So you actually kind of want to cut this as close as you can. There is a little bit of leniency to this. I'd say probably a handful of frames to make that punch. But if you get it on the last possible frame, really important for IL style in particular, King Boom Boo actually comes towards you like this, because on the last possible frame, he's registered the fact that he's doing his turnaround, but he hasn't actually turned around yet. You hit the hourglass on the same frame before he could actually turn around, and so now he thinks he needs to come towards you, and so then you do the rest of the fight as normal. A little finicky, you gotta do slightly different angles for this one. And that's the fight. That was a bit of a slow one, but you can still see we still got a solid 36. Ideally you get low 36s. You do need both of those strats to get a low 36. It's finicky, it's rough, you're gonna probably have trouble with it, but just keep at it. If you have any other questions, let me know. Paco's really good at it. He taught me. Let him know too. But that's the gist of that boss. Basically the only thing that went wrong there was my punches were really slow, just because I wanted to make sure I got through the fight to demonstrate it. So anyway, Egg Golem. This is the main point of time loss for the fact that we don't have Light Dash. I'll just quickly go over with when you have light dash here, you would just light dash off of that ring. If you're familiar with doing this fight normally, you would already know that that's just normal. So that's ideal.
Point is the head.
From
Find a way to
there,
the top.
first things first, important thing to know here, there is an extra life in this arena. There's also one in Egg Golem Dark, and those are so important to know because both of these bosses have a really funny quirk where I'll just show you. So you press A to start the fight immediately, and after
That's the way to get on top.
about 3 seconds, you can see he starts bobbing up and down and he realizes, oh hey, I should probably punch this guy. So for whatever reason, when you skip ahead by mashing A of his like little starting animation, that stacks. So every time I restart, that timer is gonna get longer.
It's the easiest way up.
You can see now he's not punching until like 6 seconds in, whereas I think he punched about 5 seconds in before. And again, yeah, see, he starts bobbing around 5 seconds, and then he starts his punch around 8 seconds. So it's a little more than like it's like a second and a half, I want to say, for each restart. I believe optimally for this, I think it's 8 restarts would be the ideal. But you're probably not going to get it in exactly 8. You can afford to not do that. Just as long as you have at least that many, that'll be ideal. And so just every attempt, restart, make sure you mash A to skip the cutscene, come down here, you grab the life, you repeat about 10 times. We're not going to grab the life because for the sake of example, we're doing infinite lives right now. But just do this a bunch. Okay, that's probably enough times. And then after every failed attempt too, as long as you're not failing on the death strat, which at least for Egg Golem Hero, it pretty much never happen. Egg Golem Dark, it's a very reasonable thing to get too greedy and do that, so you can lose lives on that fight. At least this fight, thankfully, because this is probably the toughest fight in the run, except for maybe the Eggman and Tails ones, which are also very frustrating. This fight in particular really likes to dig into lives, so it's really good that we have infinite attempts. But anyway, you start, you move back, charge your spin dash. How I like to do super bounces with my own hands is I'll charge my spin dash like this and pause. And then whenever I release, I will do start to unpause the game, and I'm using an Xbox controller for reference, and bring my thumb down on A and X at the same time because of how the joints in the thumb work. It should make it so that you hit them in sequence like that. And as you can see, there's a variety of bad bounces you can get. That's the ideal. That one I got right there, where you get the trail. Those are the fast bounces. This is a slower bounce. And those are the ideal bounces. We're gonna restart again. I can't believe I actually got 4 out of 5 good bounces like that so quick. But yeah, a failed bounce is pretty much an immediate fail. Just restart, But grab your life and then restart. And this first hit is where all the time loss is coming from. It's just a lot tougher. But yeah, just aim, time those right. Starting out, if you get like a bad bounce or two, that's okay. If you really want to aim for like a really top time, you are going to need 5 out of 5 good bounces. So really just aim on working on that super bounce consistency, because you are going to need them. Thankfully, again, infinite tries. But it's really difficult to fluctuate from the timing of doing it from here versus doing it from here. Like these are real natural. When you have light dash, that's what you're going to be used to, because that's how the first hit is too. If you want to be real safe, safe versus fast, I find that when you're recharging your spin dash, if you want to do it optimally, you sweep back around like this and you end up a little bit closer. But if you stay back a little further, it does feel like it makes these super bounces a little easier. It does not lose a ton of time. You can hit them with pretty solid consistency. These bounces I'm getting here, they don't lose too much time. They do lose a bit, but it's not a ton. If you get like 1 or 2 of those, don't worry about it. It's just the really floaty bounces that you really have to worry about. Let's see if I can get one. Not that. That's the good bounce. So yeah, those are mid-tier bounces. That's obviously a dead run. That's still a dead run. Those are good bounces. That's a weird bounce, but that's pretty decent. Okay, well, I'm allergic to getting the bounce I want to get. That one. Those are the bad bounces. They lose about 1.5 seconds each, I believe. If you want to take one of those starting out, it's not too bad, but this fight is probably going to be a lot of time loss for, unless you're like really committed to getting 5 out of 5 good bounces. And I'll just go until I get a proper good attempt at this point. Okay, so finishing off here, what you need to do is as soon as you kill him, you gotta immediately charge a spin dash, bounce, and then double bounce down. And as long as you do that right, I think it was 2 pretty underwhelming bounces. Still got a mid 21. 21s are fantastic. That's what you ideally want to aim for. If you're getting 22s or 23s, that's fine too.
That's a good one.
Definitely the least lenient.
Very well. If that's how you want to play, I will
Yeah.
take it from you.
Where I guess I just mean like in the case of like, it's very hard to get like a proper time. So if you're just getting a second or 2 slower, don't worry, there's other places to make it up. The only other fight I can think of that's really finicky like that is Biolizard. But yeah, really not too much I can say other than just do the super bounces. I really recommend that method of slamming your thumb down on A and X at the same time. It really helped me build consistency with it. And it's gonna be hard there's really not much more I can say other than that. But at the very least, IL style, I think is nicer in the regard of you're just doing one thing. Don't have to think about other hits or anything like that. You just do the one thing 5 times and then you're out. And you have infinite tries. So it's okay. But all of that said, onto Rouge. Rouge and Knuckles are essentially identical fights. There's like little differences with the AI, but for the most part, they work the exact same. This is another fight that starts with a cutscene, so we do need a restart here. You want to hold about this angle, down and slightly left, and then I believe 720 is the first frame you can do this. If you're used to doing hunting ILs, you're gonna be familiar with this. We need to do a pause accel to hit Rouge on the first possible frame. I say first possible frame. It's actually not possible to hit her on the first possible frame. It's a little weird. There's, of the early frames, I believe the first frame doesn't work, the second and third frames do work, and then the fourth frame doesn't work, and then from there I don't know. But ideally you want to aim for the second frame, which is, I believe you would pause and see 7, I want to say, you see 719, I believe you just don't get to hit. But anyway, how pause accel works, basically just like a frame perfect pause hover, you press A and pause on the next frame, unpause and press A, and this does a grounded glide. Just glide from a standstill, and you're immediately at the speed you would be as if you landed from a glide, because, well, that's what you're doing. And that's fast enough that it lets you punch. So then you do a punch. If you do it wrong like that, like I knew that was a second frame jump. That was not a first frame jump. You can tell by Knuckles' animation. Okay, so there we go. So when you get a perfect punch accel like that, Rouge will knock back. Her AI will act a little bit differently than you're probably used to in story. Usually when you hit her quickly in story, her, and by extension also Knuckles, they do the same thing. They'll do a combo, and then after the combo you can spam drills on them. Sometimes she'll do that like there. A lot of times though, depending on the frame, she'll spiral. But the rest of the fight is extremely self-explanatory from there. It works exactly the same. It's just for the first hit, you need to make sure that you're doing it off of a restart to save the 0.85, and you need to make sure that you're doing a perfect punch accel. That's it. That's all there is to that fight. By extension, if you're here and you're wondering, how do I do Knuckles? It's the exact same. It's the exact same fight. So there you go. That's the Knuckles guide too. But regarding Eggman 2, Eggman 2 and Tails 2 work extremely similarly to each other. If you recall, for Eggman 1, the setup that we did for getting this lock on, it works basically the same for this. It's a little weirder because the camera's pivoting. You kind of have to set it up a little quicker. From there, he's still very concerned with pivoting. So he's going to try and pivot, so you need to aim out here to shoot him. You're going to wait about 2 seconds. And then, ideally you don't get close enough for him to punch you like that. But there's a variety of ways to do this third and fourth hit. I ideally like to try and manip him. Where I'll do that, and you see now he just shoots over there. I have no idea why he turned around. The AI is funky like that. usually he's supposed to shoot a laser there. But yeah, AI is weird, but it's not so inconsistent that you'll be here for very many attempts. This is definitely one of the easier boss ILs. So you just do your first hit, line up your second, hold the lock on, and then he shoots over there. You do that. That was a very slow one. Ideally, you hit him as soon as his 2 frames of invincibility are up, and you're just chilling and you move on to the next without issue. So, yeah, pretty straightforward. Tails 2 is going to be very similar to that too, but you can't actually manip him like that. So it can be a little more finicky. Now, I guess this is the big one. There's a setup guide in, I believe, Brian's video showcasing this. If it's not that one, I'll grab the actual video and I'll put it in the description, but I do believe it's a video from Brian, where essentially there's a handful of frames where at the start of the fight, you want to hold upright and jump and immediately pause. This is one of those strats that requires pause buffers, like I mentioned, and this is why we don't have light dash on Sonic. And so try and get it. 5, 6. Okay, so I believe this is one of the frames that works. I believe it's like 610 to 618. But from here, these pauses need to be frame perfect. So it's 2 frames. If you remember what we did for the Golem super bounces, I do the same kind of strat here, where I smash my finger down on AX, but instead of start AX, it's AX start, because you're using A to unpause, X to bounce, start to pause. And so you hold up. I'm gonna restart. It's gonna be hard to do this off of a pause menu that's been neutral sticked for a while.
Before this is over, I'll show you the true power of
6. Okay, my bounces are not quite right here. As you can see, I'm losing ground on him. If you do this optimally, you should hit him like the 2nd or 3rd bounce. It's very quick.
Before this is over, I'll show you the true power of
Okay. Depending on the time too, I do notice you need to adjust your angle a little bit. 614 is not directly up. Okay, there we go. I hit him. So as you can see, there's only about 3 bounces, but I hit him. A lot of the times with this, since this is a task bounce, you're going to be coming out of this with a lot of speed. So you want to immediately start bouncing again so that you regain control of yourself. And from there, the rest of the fight is just pacing your bounces so that you hit him as he runs up to you over and over.
Before this is over, I'll show you the true power of
But you won't be able to just attack him. Try something to lower his defenses.
You're better than impossible.
So,
The ultimate light.
there.
Game over, Shadow.
Took a little bit. Like I said, hard strat is viable
This is Scorpion
for this category. Really learn that one in an IL setting before you even attempt it in a boss rush. But the hardest thing really is the task bounces. From there, learning how to space yourself so that you get good bounces on him after the fact. is definitely important for ensuring you get a good time. If you don't want to do the task bounces, there is another method for getting a good first hit. It's I believe you light dash through at a certain time, so you would actually want light dash on for that, and you can get like mid 15s with that instead of mid 14s, which is what you get with task bounce. So it does lose time overall because it's pretty consistent to get mid 14s with task bounce. And then you would just bounce for the rest of the hits like you do with the task bounce strat. I'll include a link that shows an example of that. I'm actually not familiar with that particular strat because I went straight from single segment style to task bounces. I saw no reason to learn that strat. I encourage you, task bounces, they're hard, but they're not, it's not impossible at all. Give it a try. But that's about all of the hero side. Moving on to dark, we go to Hotshot, which is probably the hardest boss in this side of the story. That or Tales 1. There's a couple ways you can handle this if you want to be safe with it, which is what I tend to do whenever I'm in an all boss run. If I'm in a dark, I'll do the optimal strat. But in an all, there's definitely less leeway, but you still need a good time. So I tend to stick to Hotter Shot here. Hotter Shot, if you're not aware, is very similar to the IL strat, but you come up here, and then when he launches up like this, you homing attack him. As soon as you gain control of Shadow again, you homing attack over these boxes, rinse and repeat, and then you end the fight. This saves about 1.5 seconds over the normal single segment method, so you can get like mid to low 20s with this as opposed to mid to low 22s. But if you're trying to eke out every single bit of time save, you'll ideally want to do the optimal strat. The best setup I found for it is that at the start of the fight, you just do a neutral stick homing attack, and then you hold about this angle, and you want to immediately jump. I wasn't holding far enough left. But so there we go. So if you do that right, you'll bounce off of where the G is on the left side, and you'll bounce into the cockpit as it floats up in the air. Ooh, cool. I love turning on the achievements by mistake. And then from there, the rest of the fight goes as normal, but as you can see, this first homing attack onto this box is a lot harder. This is the hard part of this strat. It's not getting the first hit. The first hit is very reliable, especially with this setup. It's just neutral stick homing attack, up left, jump. It's just trying to get the proper distance for this. You have to homing attack pretty much as soon as you're actionable. If you do that, you can barely make it onto this platform. And then from here, these box hits become a lot more normal, like you would do on Hotter Shot, since you're coming from the same angle with much more hover frames. Okay, so now we can see the bleed effect I mentioned, where the boss popped back because I didn't hit it frame perfectly. And so it's just, it's a balance of hitting the boss at the perfect time and not hitting them too early. Okay, there we go. That was a pretty good fight. 19? Yep, awesome. That might have actually tied my PC PB. That's really solid. Anyway, that's the gist of Hot Shot. You basically have those two strats to choose from. I would really recommend Hotter Shot. That strat is very tough. But if you do want to go for it in a category as long as this, by all means. It does still save about an extra half a second. It is worth it. It's just tough. But anyway, going into Tails 1, this fight works very similarly to Eggman 1 that we did before. Gonna do a lot of the same things of getting the early lock on, same setup, and then doing the death so that we can save more time, IGT. So starting out, same thing. You don't have the visual cue of the leg this time, but it is the same setup. You just hold around this angle, lock on, right down, start, hold B. From here, you want to hold about this angle, and then I created a more reliable setup for this first hit because Tails is always going to move to the right, and I want to make sure that I can hit him right off the bat. So I go to about here, holding this angle. I believe 560 to 560 forward. I believe it's a 3-frame window. And you shoot. Then you shoot again. Lock on like you would for Eggman 1. Saw I was fairly late on that last lock on, but that's the full fight. This fight is technically slower, but in practice I find that I get very similar times. Unfortunately, Tails is also a lot more aggressive, as you can see. So it's actually very feasible for Tails to swat you out of the sky, which makes sense. You're fighting this boss later in the game than you were Eggman 1, so they made the boss more aggressive. But that's about the gist of the fight. It works basically the exact same as the other one, except for this shot. You just gotta make sure you hit that Vulcan. Really do not want to stray from this routing pretty much at all. I find that Tails 1's AI is a lot more finicky, where in particular, I don't know if I can show it, but for whenever you shoot the Vulcan cannon on the third hit, if you aren't positioned in the ideal spot, he likes to pivot to the right a lot and actually dodge the shot, which that's obviously a huge problem. The other thing that's more of a problem with this fight, as you can see, I'm missing the setup quite a bit. He's got kind of the same thing of Eggman 2 and Tails 2, where he pivots immediately, so you have a lot less time to actually set this up. The setup works the same, you just need to be fast about it. Ah, almost. So, that's about the gist of the fight. I'll fast forward ahead to a successful attempt at this point.
Get ready to lock on.
Nice attempt.
Better luck next time.
I may not cut that out. That was literally like the next attempt. But yeah, that's the gist of it. Basically the same fight. I'm gonna be saying that a lot for Dark. Once again, nice frame perfect pause. Much like all the other cutscene fights, have to spend a life here to restart. They've said 0.85. From here, if you're trying to get a good IL, I've messed with some things lately that I feel like make this fight a little faster, and so I'm gonna document them, even though I don't have, I guess, definitive proof. I mean, I have the video record of it because people thought 3054 was the cap, and I beat it by 1 frame with strat. But I'm gonna say it's faster. But essentially, how you move in these early moments manipulates Flying Dog's RNG. If you want to do it normal way, the normal fast method for this is you hold right and glide, and then you wait for the camera to pivot over like this. Come over here. You have to rush over. Make sure you release glide right before you hit him and release your stick. And then, as long as you had enough height, you should land on the box like this. Time it again to do it again. So then rush to the corner, spiral. I might be a little late on this hit. No, this is gonna be good timing. So there's a zone. And I've talked about this with everybody I've talked about Flying Dog with. Essentially, there's sort of a range of areas. The areas where people tend to lose a lot of time on this boss are they'll make Flying Dog be angled too far left because they're scared of messing up the manip. This hit right there, this is even a little more left than I'd like, but this is good. This should give a good manip. And so then we rinse and repeat. This is the right positioning again. And then end the fight. So this is probably going to be a high 30, low 31. I'm going to reset because I want to specifically talk about those manip hits some more and talk about what I do for the first hit. Instead of doing just a glide to the left and neutral sticking, I try to do like a punch excel or an Onvar excel. Punch excels I find are more reliable. Okay, there we go. Okay, so as you can see, if you get the excel right, we're positioned quite a bit more to the right than we were before, because Flying Dog's RNG was not RNG. His movement was manipulated in a different way, and so what this does in practice is it lets him, for some reason, it seems to make him turn a little faster whenever he gets into the spot where you're manipulating him, and it saves just a little bit of time. Now, I've already shown the rest of the fight, but while I'm here, I do want to talk a little more about the manip. Okay, so we've got the guy manipped far to the left, and let's count it out. So, starts at 22, and the reticle shows back up about 3 seconds later. So,
This is Flying Dog headquarters. Intruder found entering security hole. Preparing to attack.
now let's compare against a good attempt. Okay, here we go. This is a more proper manip. Okay, 1982. And that was about 0.8 faster. So yeah, it's a pretty striking difference. It's about 0.8 seconds per hit. So really make sure that you're manipping him near the corner. That is very important in particular. This corner is pretty much the furthest you can manip him on the first hit. For the second hit, it's more like this angle is about as far as you can send him. It's a little bit further left. Not much, but it is a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're getting him pretty much right on that line. If you're a little safe, that's okay. Fell over. Get him as close to the corner as possible. Get him a little further left. Then one more hit. Oh, that's a 30. So that's the gist of Flying Dog. You can get as low as 30.5s, but if you're getting 30s, you're in good shape. Even low 31s, perfectly fine. I'm pretty sure my PB has a low 31. So now we're at Sonic 1. So if you watched the Shadow 1 section, this is going to be a lot of deja vu. But we got a real big mix up here where so for the first hit, you do hold around the same angle you would hold for Shadow 2 if you're trying to do optimal. If you're just trying to get like a 10-15, you hold right instead of left. Ooh, big mix up. Then same thing where charge your spin dash and you storage into him. Getting the second hit is definitely tougher than it is for Shadow 2, in my opinion. But other than that, not too different of a fight. Any sort of low 10 will be fine. You could lose tenths on this fight. It's not something you have to worry too. Now, Egg Golem Dark. This is another one that just getting an 11 should not be too difficult. If you really don't want to like try and optimize out every single frame, take your 11 and go. But the setup I use for this is, first things first, you have to restart at least 8 times. So for each life, much like Egg Golem Hero, there's a life in the arena, so you don't have to lose any lives. You can just repeatedly go, grab the 1-up. I'm gonna stop doing this, but essentially want to restart 8 times or more. Then what I like to do is I hold up at the start, and I like to buffer for this. You really, again, you don't have to buffer for this. You just need to get Eggman facing around this angle, because what he's going to do here is he's going to shoot towards the right arm, and the right arm will give him critical hits, and you need critical hits for this boss. They do significantly more damage than anything else. I want to say it's 2.3 times. I'm sure somebody will correct me if that's wrong. But anyway, want to make sure you get the critical hits. They do much more damage. And this is the quickest setup I've found to get Eggman facing somewhere where he can shoot for critical hits. From here, you want to shoot out of rhythm so that you can get your shots out quickly. You only need to shoot about, you only need to press B about 5 times per second. I find that to be a little too slow to pace myself. So I press about 10 presses a second. If you want to put something in particular on, I know Eye of the Tiger. I know that song is a very similar BPM to the BPM you need to shoot the cannon. And so you just unpause, play into him until about 4.8. And I like to do a pause hover here. And so I pause hover, and then from here, I'll go for the middle locks, then the left locks, while mashing the whole time. And the mash from this will eventually open up the right locks for me to get those whenever I get back. Left locks, right locks, and I wait until about mid-10, drop down. There you go. That should get you mid-11s every time. That should be all you need. If you want to go lower, you can be greedier on the death strat, or there are ways to save little bits of time on the shooting and the lock-ons that I do, but I find that method's real consistent for getting a good time. I'm not really going to dwell on that one much more than that. Pretty easy fight. Speaking of easy fights, if you remember the Rouge section, you will recall I said that they are identical fights, basically. So, same rule of thumb, 720 is the first frame that you can hit him. And so you're just going to aim to get a pause excel for the first hit. You'll either wait until after he spirals or does a punch combo. And then from there, you'll just spam handstands on him until he dies. So there's the spiral. I'm glad I got to showcase both. That's a really underwhelming time. Your time can vary pretty heavily if you just spam handstands like this. So ideally you do want to try and time it. I find it very hard to time without buffers, but yeah, real straightforward fight. And much like I mentioned before, Tails 2, very similar fight to Eggman 2. The same setup you did for the other mech versus mech fights. Hold this angle, right down, restart, hold B. It's a little more finicky, just like with Eggman 2, because he moves right off the bat. There we go. From there, hold about the same angle that you held for Eggman 2. Shoot. 1, 2, 3 jumps. Shoot the thing. Wait for his invulnerability to wear off. Shoot him one more time. Real straightforward. Should get you a 12 every time. Ideally, you're getting a low 12 because you're really making sure you're timing these hits quickly. But yeah, real simple fight. So this fight is the first fight we've had in a while that's actually different. That's cool. So this fight, obviously Shadow has no bounce, so this fight works quite a bit different than it does for Shadow 2. What we do, this light trail, or this light ring trail that's right next to Shadow right now, when the fight starts, you'll immediately hit this light ring trail. I don't know why I keep calling it light ring. Light dash trail. The light dash through it, and then you swoop from up to left to down so that you can swoop down and storage into Sonic. So showing that.
All right, Shadow. Time for me to finish this.
Like that. From there, you'll position yourself a little bit in front of him. This should be about right. It might be a little close. And then you charge a spin dash. And then, ideally, like that, he gets hit as he tries to pass you.
avoid the sonic wind,
From there,
use the somersault.
do normal homing attack chains and hope you don't get janked out, because that can happen sometimes. You want to space that first homing attack a little bit further than the others, because since you're hitting him in a different way, it is actually possible to homing attack him a little too early so that your third hit doesn't actually hit him even though you homing attack into him, because he still has iframes.
You won't be able to just attack.
Well done, Faker.
This is so cool. Recording curse.
Time for me to finish this.
You won't be able to just attack him. Try something to lower his defenses.
Well done, Faker.
Okay, there we go. That's how it's supposed to look.
I told you.
And you'll get mid 15s, low 15s if you really optimize the hits. Let's start. So all that leaves now is maybe the hardest boss in the run and maybe the easiest boss in the run. Probably second easiest. Bigfoot is there. But honestly, Biolizard could have a whole video all on its own, and I still could like not even scratch the surface of everything, but I'm gonna try and go over everything that you're really gonna need. I do want to preface it by saying mashing speed is not a requirement to get a good time for this boss. If you want to get an absolute top level time, yes, you need fast mashing. But you can get like a 56 on this fight. You could literally get like world record tier times right now without that. Because Chain Chomp has a 59 with no death, no LSBA, with probably like 6 to 7 presses per second mashing. So don't be discouraged on this fight just because you can't mash. Mashing does make the fight easier in that it lets you salvage a lot more situations, and there's a lot more spots that are like good to hit on that you can hit on by having the ability to mash fast. But mashing fast does not strictly save a large amount of time. All that said, how you want to start the fight, around 7 seconds in. Turns like this. You want to charge a spin dash and then jump. And so you're going to jump towards the back like this. This tail here, in particular the crack between the tail and the rest of the body, is like, that's the money spot. Particularly a little more leaning towards the tail at first. Those are the places where you're going to be able to get a lot of height. If you're already familiar about Biolizard, you already know this. If you aren't familiar with Biolizard, there's a great tutorial by Stellar on how to Biolizard really well. I'll find that and link that in the description too. Give that a watch. That's a much more beginner focused thing. Probably should have given a disclaimer for this. This is really not a beginner guide. If it helps out beginners, awesome. But this is definitely made for people who already know how to play the bosses pretty well and want to go into the process of learning IL style. So regarding this, you should already probably have some level of grasp of how to get up Biolizard cleanly. I do this fight a little weird, so I'm going to try and do it more conventionally for the sake of this tutorial, and then I'll show how I do it too, because if you do have mashing speed, you don't even need the stick, and it doesn't like lose time. But anyway, you spin dash jump over here, and then you homing attack up. You want to spin dash 3 times. You have to wait out a cooldown, because essentially between each hit, Biolizard creates the giant repel zone where he says, no, you will not attack me. So you have to wait that out, but you want to have momentum so that you can swoop back in with full speed and repeat.
You did that to me. Why would you do something like that?
Rinse and repeat. I like how I said I'm going to do this more conventionally, and I'm still not using the stick. I'm just mashing slower. If you want to mash faster, you can get away with goofy positions like that. But that's not what we're here for. So. Here. We'll actually use the stick. Okay. So. Yeah, that's the gist of it. Ideally, you need to get as high as possible before you start homing attacking.
You may be able to grind on that height coming
Like you can see whenever you come in with low height, that's when you don't get anything done. If you come in with good height, that's when you can actually get stuff done. And you can see I can mash extremely slow and still climb, as long as my positioning is good. Timing is like just as important as actually going fast. Going fast does make timing a non-factor,
energy attack. Use the somersault jump.
but if you time, it does make it less of a factor. But you're not here for how to do that if you're a baby masher. You have 20 presses per second mashing because you're awesome and epic and you're going super nasty crazy like that, right? Well, if you're doing that, the real place that it seems like you want to aim for is more towards this fin right here. Because this fin gives some nasty angles if you can mash like a madman. It lets you get really close too. So that's the ideal. Well, this is not the ideal. That was so awesome. But yeah, if you want to be super awesome nasty, you aim for the fin. And the fin gives you really, really good angles. You can mash like crazy. So that's how essentially how the first 5 hits. If you're really trying to go crazy on this fight, you're really trying to get like super amazing times, you're probably going to want to get like a sub-minute. And that's not too bad with the help of LSBA. If you want to know what that stands for, me too. But basically it's a death strat where you'll reset the level while also clearing the level, and so you'll still get the actual time that you're supposed to get,
You can't attack.
but you save a little bit of extra time with it. But yeah, if you're wanting to mash like crazy, you ideally don't want to grab any rings here on the first 5 hits if you're really trying to push this. Now use this fin with your super awesome epic mashing. If he gets in weird positions like this, sometimes you gotta readjust with weird positionings. I'm not gonna get it there, but that's fine. Some positionings are just hard to work with. You'd be surprised how much you can get away with while being on the actual same platform as him. So experiment with that. But yeah, ideally first hit you want to get it like 10. Second hit is like 17 or 18. Yeah, that's an 18, that's fine. Third hits should be like a 25, maybe a 24 if you're like super gaming. Case in point about how much you can get away with there. And ideally last hit should be like a 38, 39. And if you want to be super awesome, you're gonna stand as far forward here. Generally about, I'm on the wrong side for what I would normally do. But you want to aim for about the back foot on the other side, because you usually end up on the other side. There. Go up. You hope that you don't get hit, because that's really about all you can do IL wise. You want to be a little safer, you can sit a little further back since you might be running low on lives by this point. But from there, basically all you need to do at that point is that you'll somersault instead of homing attacking the switch. And then from there, you pray. We're just gonna take it at this point, just for the sake of going off the ending. So, yeah, just somersault in instead, and ideally die, you'll LSBA, which I did not. If you get it right, you'll see a white flash there instead, and you'll finish the level. It is important to do IL style for really just getting every bit of time save you can possibly get. But yeah, it's not the end of the world if you just get a regular death strat. And as you can see, it is inconsistent. You kind of just have to pray. If you come in with the same approach, you should get it decently often. But there's definitely times when you don't. I will also say regarding this is usually just a dead run. I actually salvaged it decently well there, but this is still kind of slow. Okay, well now it's actually a dead run. But you can salvage any actual hit that you get. Something Stellar's video also mentions that's important to note for this. When you end up on the opposite side of where you need to be, don't try to jump to get over. I was trying to show it there, but I was actually so late that I didn't get the wonky thing. So yeah, this foot is what you want to aim for. And as long as you go directly forward from there, you should usually get the LSBA. Like that. There we go. That's a solid time. You would definitely take that in IL style. Getting something like a 56 is a bit too much to ask for, I feel like. Especially in this category. But that's about the gist of Biolizard. There's a lot more to talk about with that fight. Yeah, it's tough. It'll take a lot of practice, just like at Golem. But just keep at it. It's probably the toughest part of the run. And last is Finalhazard. This is another one. If you're on Dreamcast, I'll point out the specific voice line that is problematic. This one, ideally, you just want to hold up. for the most part. You can weave a little bit. Ideally, you want to get low 149, maybe a 148. But at this point, you're probably at the end of the run and you don't have a lot of lives, so you may not be able to afford to be picky. This is pretty much the only point in the run that really has RNG. This is where the line will show up, about 3 seconds. So around where he says 4 minutes, right here, this is where you would restart. And by restarting here, you would delay the timer. It saves about 0.6, I want to say. It might be 0.8. I think I said 0.8 before. Right. You save a time that's a decent amount, but not quite a second. Let's just put it that way. If you're not on Dreamcast, don't worry about that. If you're not on Dreamcast, this is all holding up, not getting hit by lasers, and by leveraging your up and down movement like that. And just doing what you can to get the best boil pattern you can with your remaining lives. Which you really don't have too much control over that. If you don't have a lot of lives, you're probably just focused on getting done with this. If so, just take your 150. It's not a big deal. But ideally, you want boils like the one I just got. If you see neck boils, those pretty much lose about a second each. Hit 2, I feel like you usually want to go up. Hit 3, I feel like you usually want to go down. If you're going for consistency, you don't want to hold directly up, because holding directly up will just get you screwed. But if you're really going for speed, you kind of just need to send it and hope that your A and B presses will get you around what you're staring at. You can afford to do a little bit of fidgeting. It won't lose much time, but the more fidgeting around you do, the more time you lose. This is really good boil RNG, actually. So that's a 149. That might have been a 148 if not for that bad final boil. And finally, after 2.5 hours, that is IL Boss Rush. And with these kind of strats, you can expect that kind of time. This is not an official attempt, of course. I did refresh my lives a few times because I was focused on explaining things over just you're doing as much as I can within 99. But I think that's pretty reflective of all the strats. That's about a second off my actual PB. Yeah, second off. So with all of that, I think that covers basically everything. Let me know if you got any questions in the comments, and hope you have a nice day.